My brother's girlfriend said, "Thank God you don't have a social life. Who else would watch the kids for free?" My brother Danny laughed. So I disappeared. Now they're begging me to come back. Hey, before we move on to the video, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Thanks. At my brother's graduation party, his girlfriend Melissa looked me dead in the eye while I was chasing after their screaming 2-year-old and said, "Thank God you don't have a social life. Who else would watch the kids for free?" The entire backyard went quiet. My brother Danny just laughed and raised his beer. Riley's basically our live-in nanny at this point. I'm 26 years old, and for the past 4 years, I've been the family's default babysitter. It started innocently enough when Danny and Melissa had their first kid, Liam. I was fresh out of college, working a dead-end retail job, and living in my tiny apartment across town. When they asked if I could watch Liam occasionally so they could have date nights, I said yes. I love kids, and I genuinely wanted to help my brother navigate new parenthood. But occasionally became every weekend. Then it became every weekend plus weekday emergencies. Then it became, "We're going out of town for the weekend. Can you stay at our place?" By the time their second kid, Emma, came along 2 years later, I was basically their unpaid childcare service. I never asked for money because they were family, and Danny was always talking about how tight finances were with 2 kids and Melissa not working. What made it worse was how they talked about my life like it didn't matter. If I mentioned I had plans, Melissa would sigh dramatically and say things like, "Must be nice to have so much free time." If I looked tired from staying up all night with a sick baby, Danny would joke about how I was getting good practice for when I have my own kids someday. They treated my availability like it was their right, not a favor I was doing them. The breaking point moments came regularly. Like when they went to Mexico for a week and left me with both kids, telling everyone they'd hired a sitter, without mentioning it was me working for free. Or when Melissa's mom visited and made comments about how I was still single at my age, and at least I'm useful for something. Danny just sat there, saying nothing. My neighbor Sarah from across the hall started noticing how often I had the kids. She'd see me in the hallway struggling with diaper bags and car seats at 6 a.m., taking them to daycare before work. One morning she asked, "Don't they pay you for all this?" When I explained they were my brother's kids, she gave me this look I'll never forget. "Riley, I'm a mother of 3. What they're doing isn't normal family help. They're using you." But I kept doing it because I loved Liam and Emma, and I genuinely believed I was helping my brother build his life. Danny had gone back to school for his master's degree, and I told myself I was supporting his education, supporting their young family. When people asked what I was doing with my life, I'd make excuses about figuring things out and helping family. What nobody knew was what I was doing during those long hours while the kids napped or played quietly. While Danny and Melissa were out living their lives, I was building mine in secret. I'd started a blog about parenting tips and child development during my first year of constant babysitting. It began as a way to process what I was learning and maybe help other caregivers, but slowly, it started gaining traction. The blog led to freelance writing gigs. Those led to consulting work with parenting websites. That led to creating online courses for new parents. All of it happened in the margins of my real life, during stolen hours while kids slept or watched cartoons. I worked on my laptop at their kitchen table, answered client emails while pushing swings at the park, recorded course videos in my tiny apartment at midnight after Danny and Melissa picked up the kids. By the time of Danny's graduation party, I was making more money than either of them, but I kept it quiet. Part of me was afraid they'd expect me to financially support them too if they knew. Part of me was protecting something that felt mine in a life where everything else belonged to their needs. That graduation party was supposed to be celebrating Danny's MBA. He'd be starting a new job the following month, finally making decent money. I thought maybe things would change, maybe they'd need me less. Instead, Melissa spent the party talking to relatives about how they were thinking of having a third baby and how lucky they were to have built-in childcare. When she made that comment about my social life, something inside me went cold. I looked around the backyard at all the relatives nodding and smiling, like my entire existence as their free labor was just a cute family dynamic. My parents were there, and they said nothing. Danny's college friends were there, and they laughed along. Even my own grandmother, who raised 6 kids without any help, just shrugged like this was normal. That night, after I'd cleaned up their kitchen and put both kids to bed while they celebrated with friends, I sat in my car for 20 minutes before driving home. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I spent the next week quietly planning. I researched apartments in Austin, where most of my online clients were based. I calculated my savings, which had grown substantially from my digital business income. I organized all my client contracts and made sure everything could be managed remotely during a transition. Most importantly, I started preparing Danny and Melissa for what was coming, though they didn't realize it. I began saying no to their requests. Small no's at first. Sorry, I can't watch them Friday night. I have a work thing. I can't do this weekend. I'm busy. They reacted exactly how I expected. Melissa got passive-aggressive, making comments about how I was getting flaky and forgetting what family means. Danny started guilt-tripping me about how stressed they were, how much they needed support. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Melissa called me at 7 a.m. on a Saturday, frantic because their regular daycare was closed for repairs and they had important plans they couldn't cancel. She needed me to take both kids for the entire day. When I said no, she lost it. What do you mean no? Riley, we're family. You don't have anything important going on. This is literally the one thing you're good at. That's when I told her I was moving to Austin in 2 weeks. The silence on the phone lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. Then came the explosion. She started yelling about how selfish I was, how I was abandoning my nephew and niece, how I was destroying their family stability. She called Danny, who immediately called me back, furious. What the hell, Riley? You can't just leave. We're counting on you. The kids are counting on you. Do you know how much childcare costs? We can't afford to replace you. That sentence hung in the air. Replace me. Like I was an appliance that had broken down. Then you should have treated me like I mattered, I said quietly, and hung up. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in family manipulation. Suddenly, everyone cared about my well-being. My parents called, concerned about my impulsive decision. Relatives reached out, telling me how important I was to the family, how I was making a mistake. Melissa tried a different approach, bringing the kids over to my apartment for visits, where Liam would cry about how he'd miss me and Emma would cling to my legs. The cruelest was when Danny showed up at my door the night before I left. He brought both kids and a folder of papers. Look, we know you want to be appreciated, he said, like he was negotiating a business deal. We've calculated what we would have paid for childcare over the years. It's a lot. We can work out a payment plan, maybe give you some back pay. But you can't leave. This is insane. I looked at the folder he was holding and realized it was probably the first time he'd ever calculated what my time was worth. Too little, too late. Danny, for years ago, if you'd asked me to be your paid nanny, I would have said yes and felt honored. If you treated this like a job instead of an expectation, if you'd respected my time and my life, I'd probably still be here. But you didn't want a nanny. You wanted a slave who felt grateful for the opportunity. He started to argue, but I continued. I'm not moving to Austin because I hate you or the kids. I'm moving because I've built a life that you never bothered to ask about. I have a career that I've been working on for 3 years while you assumed I was just killing time between babysitting gigs. I make more money than you do now, and I did it all in the hours you thought I was doing nothing important. His face changed as the reality hit him. What do you mean you make more money than me? I showed him my client dashboard on my laptop. 6 figures of annual income from my parenting consultancy, course sales, and content creation, all built during nap time and after bedtime hours while he and Melissa lived their lives. He stared at the screen for a long time. Why didn't you tell us? Because every time I mentioned anything about my work, you acted like it was a cute hobby. Remember when I told you about my first paid article? Melissa laughed and said it was fun that I was playing writer. When I mentioned the blog was getting popular, you said it was nice that I had something to do with all my free time. You never asked about it because you never thought it mattered. The next morning, I loaded my car and drove to Austin. I'd already signed a lease on a beautiful apartment downtown, set up my home office, and scheduled meetings with 3 major clients for my first week. My online business had grown enough that I was expanding into corporate consulting and launching a podcast. The aftermath was swift and brutal, though I only heard about it through my parents. Without free childcare, Danny and Melissa's carefully balanced life fell apart immediately. Melissa had to quit her part-time yoga instructor job because they couldn't afford both daycare and her training costs. Danny started working from home more, trying to juggle video calls with toddler meltdowns in the background. Their relationship began cracking under the pressure. Melissa resented having to be home with the kids constantly. Danny resented that his new job performance was suffering because he was constantly distracted. They built their entire life structure around my unpaid labor, and without it, everything collapsed. 3 months after I moved, Melissa called me crying. She'd found out that Danny had been telling his coworkers he was struggling because his flaky sister had abandoned the family. She was furious that he was blaming me instead of taking responsibility for their childcare situation. "Riley, I'm sorry," she sobbed into the phone. "I know we took advantage of you. We didn't realize how much you were doing. Can we figure something out? Maybe we could pay you to come back? The kids miss you so much." But it wasn't really an apology. It was a negotiation. She wasn't sorry for how they treated me. She was sorry for the consequences they were facing. 6 months later, Danny called. He'd been following my social media and seen that my business had been featured in several major publications. My podcast had hit the top charts in the parenting category. I'd been invited to speak at conferences and had a book deal in progress. "Jesus, Riley, I had no idea you were doing so well," he said. "I mean, I knew you were smart, but this is incredible. I'm really proud of you." It was the first time he'd ever expressed pride in my work, and it only came after external validation made it impossible to ignore. "Look," he continued, "I know things ended badly, but your family, Melissa and I have been talking, and we want to make things right. Maybe we could even do some kind of business partnership. You could consult for us on parenting stuff, help us figure out how to monetize our experience as parents." I almost laughed. Even now, even after everything, he was trying to find a way to benefit from my success. "Danny, I spent 4 years watching your children, cleaning your house, organizing your life, and supporting your dreams while you treated my time like it was worthless. Now that you've seen my work get recognition, you want to partner with me? You want to monetize the skills I developed while you were taking me for granted." He tried to backtrack, claiming he'd always supported me, always believed in me. But I could hear the desperation in his voice. Their third baby had arrived, their marriage was hanging by a thread, and they were drowning financially and emotionally. A year after I moved, my parents visited me in Austin. They were amazed by my apartment, my home office, the life I'd built. Over dinner, my mom admitted something that surprised me. "I always knew what Danny and Melissa were doing wasn't fair," she said quietly. "But you seemed to handle it so well, and they needed the help so badly. I thought maybe it was temporary, that it would work itself out. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I was afraid you'd stop helping them, and I didn't know what they'd do." It was honest, at least. My own parents had watched me sacrifice my 20s to support my brother's family, and they'd stayed quiet because it was convenient for everyone except me. Last month, I got a text from Danny. It was a photo of Emma's first day of kindergarten with a message. She asked if Aunt Riley is coming to her school play. I didn't know what to tell her. It was manipulation disguised as sentiment, and I saw right through it. He wasn't sharing a sweet moment. He was trying to guilt me back into their lives using the kids' emotions. I didn't respond. 2 years in Austin now, and I've built the life I always dreamed of but never had time to pursue. My business has expanded internationally. I've spoken at conferences in 6 countries. I bought a house with a home office and a guest room that I actually use for guests, not as emergency childcare quarters. I have friends who value my time, who make plans with me weeks in advance and keep them. I date people who are interested in my work, my thoughts, my dreams. I have a life that belongs to me. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh, if I should have tried harder to make them understand before I left. But then I remember that 4 years of gentle explanations, missed opportunities, and deferred dreams couldn't make them see what one successful business feature article did instantly. People who truly care about you don't wait for external validation to respect your value. They don't treat your generosity as an entitlement or your availability as a given. I don't know if disappearing was the right thing to do, but I finally sleep through the night without my phone next to my bed, waiting for their next emergency. And when I wake up in the morning, the only person I need to take care of is me. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button.